So it looks as though Graham Potter to Chelsea is very close. Paul Robinson, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
What sort of manager do you think they're getting?
They're getting a very, very good coach. A coach that got to a level with Brighton that I think he's probably taken them to their ceiling. And I think this is the right time for him. This is the next step up. This is the right move. He's proved that he's very, very tactically aware. He can set his teams up. They play a style of football which is very pleasing to the eye. Chelsea fans can look forward, if it is Potter, to the way that they play, to attacking football. I think they haven't scored a lot of goals at Brighton, which has been one problem for them, and Chelsea have the same problem, so it'll be interesting how he addresses that. But I think his time has come now. He's been lauded as one of the brightest, young English coaches, if you like, and I think this is the natural progression for him.
You touched on it there that Chelsea have been searching for a centre-forward. Lukaku didn't work. Aubameyang is in the door now. What other issues does he have to sort out at Chelsea?
He's got a lot of issues to sort out at Chelsea. I think there's the instability is one huge problem for him going in there at the moment. I think the transfer window, to give the manager such a huge budget and then to sack him so soon afterwards, he's got a whole dressing room of players who don't know whether they're coming or going. You know, you look at the way that the players were recruited, there's question marks how certain players would come in. Aubameyang was certainly a Tuchel signing that had his fingerprints all over it, and then the manager to leave so quickly after that, you question why that player, how he will respond to the new manager. He's got to get all the players on side, and I think there's a big task there at Chelsea to do to start with.
Just on a wider point, before we sort of get into the other bits and bobs that Graham Potter we can expect to maybe change at Chelsea, good to see an English coach, not necessarily with a stellar background as a player, getting this opportunity, because so often when a big six job comes up, it's a very similar set of names that are linked to the position.
Yeah, absolutely. I think English coaches of that ilk and that age don't necessarily get the opportunities. We saw the Tottenham job. We saw Graham Potter get linked with the Tottenham job, you know, and he didn't get that because he hadn't got the background, the CV, if you like, or the experience of winning the trophies that other managers have at that level. But how do you get experience if you're not given the opportunity to get the experience? And I think at Chelsea, in the past, recruitment and for managers, certainly they've got a short lifespan. But now, if you believe what the owner's saying, it's looking like it's going to be a longer-term project. And for him now to get this opportunity for a young English coach, and I think it's the right time for him. Like I said to you, I think at Brighton he's probably reached the ceiling. Unless there's going to be a huge influx of money, I can't see what else he can achieve. So now is the opportunity for him to achieve at the top level, to go and win trophies, to manage in the Champions League if they can qualify next season, to take Chelsea to another level. For a young English manager, it's a great opportunity for him.
Ever since it became clear pretty early on yesterday, almost immediately after Thomas Tuchel was sacked, that Graham Potter was the #1 choice, do you think there was ever a moment in his mind where he might have thought, is this the right thing for me to do? He's king of the castle at Brighton. He probably has a huge amount of control over what happens, whereas at Chelsea, you know the regularity with which managers are dispensed of. I know the owner is different, but it seems Todd Boehly is cut from the Roman Abramovich cloth in terms of getting rid of people.
It would. I mean, the early signs would say that, but if you believe the noises that are coming out, he's looking for a longer-term project. For Graham Potter to look at that from the outside, it's a huge step up for him. It's a top 4, top 6 club. And for him, like I said to you before, it's a natural progression. The only doubt probably at the back of his mind would be the instability at Chelsea, the hiring and firing regime that they've had. They've had huge success over the years with Roman Abramovich in the background, hiring and firing managers, but winning trophies at the same time. And the recruitment of managers has always been exceptional, and the progression that they've had has always been a successful one. So that will be in the back of Graham Potter's mind as to the timeline, the amount of time that he's going to get, his actual role as well, because we heard about Tuchel speaking his involvement with transfers that he didn't necessarily want, and the team around him that he didn't have, with Petr Cech leaving and others leaving the club. So it will be the role that Graham Potter has, but these opportunities don't come round very often, and I think he's at the right stage of his managerial career. He's reached a ceiling with Brighton. Where can he go unless there's an influx of money? And I think it'd be a fantastic appointment for Chelsea if he's given the opportunity.
When you talked there about the role of the manager at Chelsea, and there was a very clear structure at Brighton, and Dan Ashworth was at Brighton, having had a great reputation with what he did at England, what he did at West Brom. It's why Newcastle paid money to get him. The recruitment is very clear. In the modern day, it can't just be left to Todd Boehly plus a manager to sort out signings, can it? They have to get other people into those roles that have been left by people like Petr Cech and Marina Granovskaya.
Yeah, it's a great point you make, and I think that's probably why we're still waiting on hearing the official announcement from Chelsea. I think that's something that Graham Potter has to get right. He has to get his own support team around him. We know the recruitment that he's had at Brighton. You look at the players that they've brought in, you look at the profit that they've made on players, but they've always had a player coming in to replace that player. I think he'll want his own team around him, and I think he'll want assurances of the team between him and the owner, because that's clearly a problem at the moment. The owner seems to be the one that's buying the players. Whether that's right or not, we don't know. Whether there's been advice from the outside, but it would seem that way. But I think there'd be certain assurances and guarantees that a manager like Graham Potter taking that Chelsea job will want. He has to have a buffer between him and the owner. He has to have help in recruitment. The modern day manager can't be held responsible for everything. He has to have a team that do, the recruitment side of things. Modern day managers are given a list of players weekly. They have weekly meetings. It's not just a rush thing around the transfer market, although it does look like that sometimes. These things are well laid plans, and they go on for weeks in advance. They'll have weekly recruitment meetings, and they have staff to do that. And the buffer between him and the owner will be vitally important for him.
You will know about the sort of British mentality of building people up and then knocking them down, and that's what we tend to do in this country. But it was like yesterday, Graham Potter's brilliant. However, here's a list of things he hasn't done. As a former player, do you care that he hasn't won the World Cup like some managers you might have had in the past?
No, but there's managers out there with a great CV and a great reputation. He's got a great reputation, but his CV isn't quite there. Why? Because he hasn't had the opportunity. And how do you get the opportunity if nobody gives you the opportunity to do it? Everything that he's done thus far would stack up to say, give him a chance, give him an opportunity. The style of football that he plays, his man management with players. You very rarely hear a player, if ever, come out of Brighton and say a bad word about the manager, about the way the club's run, the stability of that football club, the setup that he's got. It's very, very easy to keep 11 players happy on a football pitch because you pick them every week. It's how you manage the dressing room. And that'll be a big task for him going to Chelsea because he's got a lot of quality players. He's got a lot of big money signings. The financial difference between Brighton and Chelsea is huge. His man management will be tested, and it's the first time it'll have been tested at that level because he's...
What's the difference then? What's the when you talk about man management being tested at a higher level, from managing and getting inside the mind of a Brighton player compared to an elite Chelsea player? If you've got the skill of man management, does it matter how good the footballer is?
No, not at all. But this is where it'll be tested because, no disrespect to Brighton, their squad is nowhere near as strong or as depthy as Chelsea's, if you like. The strength and depth that they've got. So at Chelsea, he's got to deal with 23 players, keep all of them happy, keep all of them on side because he could call on any of them at any given time. He's also got a squad at Chelsea that are out on loan, that he has to keep his eye on, that he has to develop the younger players, he has to bring other, the younger players through. So it's not just a squad of players, but it's also the squad of players that are out on loan. It's also the squad of players that aren't playing. It's man managing on a whole new scale that he hasn't had before.
Will everyone in that dressing room at the moment be saying to Mark Cucurella, what's the new gaffer like?
Yeah, I think so. And Billy Gilmore will be questioning why he's left Chelsea to go to Brighton. He's sat up Brighton and the manager...
Get him back on loan.
Get him back. But I think they've obviously got a great relationship. And if that is the last thing that Graham Potter did at Brighton was to get a huge transfer fee and a move for Cucurella, it was quite clever because he got a player that he wanted and he got his old club quite a substantial amount of money.
The other point, I guess, about it is the expectation levels between Brighton and Chelsea, and there were periods last season. He went through a spell, Graham Potter, where he won 2 in 11. He lost 6 straight games where they only scored 1 goal, Brighton, and it was sort of not back page news. People would say, "Oh, Brighton aren't on the best of runs," but it wasn't. Chelsea, you lose 3 in a row, and there's an inquest as to what's going on.
Yeah, he's not got that anymore. He's not got the freedom to lose games. The expectation is there. Yes, at Brighton, you're not so much in the limelight, you're not so much scrutinised. And that's the 2 of the things that you can probably look at if you wanted to pick holes in his managerial performance so far, is the inconsistency that they have, but they always perform well without scoring goals. That's another one. So I think, that's something that will be tested. But again, until he's done it at the next level with better players, how will you know? You talk about managers that have succeeded with lesser teams, lesser squads, they're never given the opportunity to deal with better players, to deal with better budgets. And until he's given the opportunity to do that, you won't know. Yes, there is a slight element of risk taking him, but everything stacks up to say, yeah, he's ready, give him the opportunity to do it.